I have said many times that this may be my favorite album of all time.
In 1980, I was psyched because Empire Strikes Back was coming out, and I was buying the figures for that.
It's 26 fucking times platinum. 26.
And yeah, this really established that hey, Ozzy's here as a solo artist, and he's going to do it and do it well.
It's amazing that you had enough money to buy albums after you were buying Playboys and Jergens hand lotion.
It's like it was rock that your mom liked.
Yep. And there'll be tears flowing down your eyes, kind of like when Bryan has to look at himself naked. Nah, I'm just kidding.
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah. It shows what little you know. All right. Yeah, look who's here. It's Bryan. He's being mean to me. He's a big bitch.
5 years later, my girlfriend at the time, getting a little frisky and put some songs on. It's like, you put Rush on, I'm going to leave.
Does anything happen when I do this? I know something happens when I do this. Does anything happen when I do this?
Later play keyboards with his feet. It's an alien. There's no way a human being can do that.
All right. Let's move on. Stop making fun of me, asshole.
Like, what's the problem? It's just it's a woman, a dog next to a woman about to blow a guy. Who cares?
Charlie is back from having her puppy. She'll still get your big boobies, oh, don't you?
Wow, it's the best parts of the episode.
And then your girlfriend said, if you put that in, I'm going to leave.
Yeah. We're like an old married couple. What the shit?
Just shut up and talk about Def Leppard.
Look, I came here to do two things. Chew bubblegum and talk hair metal. And it looks like I'm almost out of bubblegum.
Welcome to the Hair Metal Guru. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. And today it's the end of a special series and the beginning of Charlie coming back into the frame. So Charlie is back from having her puppy. She'll still get your big boobies, oh, don't you? So she is back and we are loving it. So anyway, it's great to have Charlie back. Today's the end of this series. This is going to be the last year that we cover in our, best hair metal albums, and not just hair metal, but rock and metal. We've worked our way down from 2000 to today when we do 1980. And who better to finish off this epic series than our good buddy Bryan from the Hairband Basement. Bryan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's been a long 20-year journey to get to this point. Holy shit.
It's like it's taken forever. I've lost.
Oh my God.
I've dyed my beard since we started. Like
Charlie came and went and came back. Had babies.
We had Reggie here. I mean,
Reggie Riley.
We had Ridley here. So, hey, Bryan, welcome back. And hey, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your show on Station Head?
Yes, I'll start with that one then. All right, yes, I got a show on Station Head every Friday nights where I play the deepest of tracks, the rarest of bands, and the little-known songs from the biggest name artists from before, during, and after the decade of decadence. So you can listen to all the deep tracks from all these bands instead of hearing, I don't know, Nothing But a Good Time by Poison again, maybe having Valley of Lost Souls. Just something to go a little deeper on these things because these albums are great. And I think there's a lot of songs that don't get played on metal shows and stations out there. Also, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at HB Basement. Always talking music there. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, and, great show on Station Head. You can follow me on X at Hair Metal Guru. I almost said at HB Basement. What the fuck? At Hair Metal Guru. And, hey, while I'm here, if you like, the kind of stuff we're talking about, love if you like, subscribe, comment, all that shit. I don't know if it helps with the algorithm, but I just appreciate you being here. And Charlie, so glad you're here too because she's very famous on YouTube. Before we get into it, want to show this might have some relevance to 1980, not newly framed, but
oh yeah, I got relevance to that.
The original 1980 Iron Maiden album.
That's awesome.
Lighting correct. Says rock and roll is not pretty. The first sighting of Eddie in Billboard magazine, I think is where I got this from. So some vintage Iron Maiden that will become apropos. See if you can spell that later on in the episode.
Iron Maiden never has a bad album cover. It's just unbelievable. I mean, all their fucking album covers are great.
Right, and one of the like Kiss putting on the makeup. Iron Maiden coming up with that mascot is one of the most brilliant marketing decisions in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah, because on that first album you just showed, it's just a picture of him. He's not doing anything. He's just hanging out in the streets, chilling.
But if you were a kid in a music store in 1980, you were going to be immediately drawn to that, without a doubt. So, besides being, fucking great musicians, Iron Maiden, damn, that was a super smart decision. I'm surprised that more bands didn't try. There were bands that
there were some
that tried something similar to come up with a mascot or whatever. But anyway, Maiden did it, and worked.
Did it best.
Made them a shit ton of money, I'm sure, somehow. So, okay. 1980. Finally, I will get the chance to talk about one of my favorite albums of all time, but that will come later in the episode. Bryan, we each chose 10, and I'll be honest, I mean, we're before hair metal. Now we're in bands that inspired hair metal, that influenced hair metal, some that maybe flirted with the beginnings of it, but we've kind of decided that Motley Crue started hair metal in 1981, even though Van Halen might be the biggest influence on hair metal, maybe along with Kiss, Zeppelin, but we're before the beginning of hair metal, so it wasn't. There's still a lot of great albums. It wasn't that easy to come up with 10, but we each got 10. So without, we had to do
let's just throw it out there. 15 minutes ago, you're in a panic. I don't have 10. I don't have 10.
Fuck, yes. Because again, he took all the good ones and I let it. So
fuck yeah, I did.
That's right. Okay. So let's get into it. Bryan, you're number 10. What do you got?
All right. My number 10, this band made it on, what was the last one I did? 83, like 83 list. Thin Lizzy's Chinatown. I don't know, just recently I've been getting into Thin Lizzy a lot. But great tunes like We Will Be Strong, Sugar Blues, Having a Good Time, Killer on the Loose, the title track. I mean, this is one of the, I think an underrated. I think, first of all, I think Thin Lizzy is underrated.
Totally.
They're known for Boys Are Back in Town and maybe Jailbreak. Yep. And they've had so many good goddamn albums, this being one of them. And they don't really get talked about a lot. And if you put on a classic rock station, it's always the same 2 songs by them, which is a shame. Right. But yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said before, it's not all glam metal isn't a thing yet. This is more of a rock band, but yeah, I think they deserve to be on the list.
I was just gonna say when I was thinking when you were talking about them, I'm like, talk about a band that just kind of got underrated and kind of, like I don't know that I hear a lot of people talking about Thin Lizzy in the grand scheme of rock and roll, but they influenced. I mean, the guys in Metallica were huge fucking Thin Lizzy fans. I mean, they covered a Thin Lizzy minor hit with Whiskey in the Jar. But you're right. You hear about those couple big hits. But Phil Lynott, I feel is kind of a forgotten legend in the rock. Yeah. They were always known for having phenomenal guitar players. So, I think, they deserve their credit to be among the bigger and more influential acts of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And Phil Lynott's a great bassist too. I just think he's got some tasty stuff. And to be able to do that while singing, we had this conversation before. I struggle with that. My brain's not wired to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
And my voice isn't wired to do the singing part. So
yeah. I'm not supposed to sing. And I know there's going to be some time in this episode where I'm tempted to do it. Just fucking stop.
Guru. Oh, come on. It's the best parts of the episode.
Yeah. And then somebody comments and they're like, yeah, I love it when he tries to sing. I'm like, it tries being the operative word there. Okay. All right. My number 10, it is talk about underground and unknown. This is a band that fits both of those, but they had members of the band who would later to become worldwide famous musicians in the hair metal scene. And I'm talking about the band Girl. And I always knew of Girl. I knew that they wrote some kick-ass songs that ended up getting covered later by some bands that we really like. But I did not know that their fucking debut album, Sheer Greed, which is what I'm talking about now, came out in 1980. Mm-hmm. And they were flirting with what would become the hair metal look back then. So I'll put the cover of this album up. They got makeup on. Now they don't have the big poofy hair, but little bit longer hair, kind of the androgynous female makeup look. So definitely an influence. I kind of put them in the same category as Hanoi Rocks,
Yeah.
an overseas band that influenced hair metal, but most people don't know about them. So they album comes out in 1980. The debut song, or the opening track, Hollywood Tease, later done by LA Guns, and it's great on the girl version. They do a kick-ass cover of Do You Love Me by Kiss. And it took me years to find this out, but one of my favorite Lillian Axe songs is a song called My Number on the album Love and War, originally done by Girl on this album. So there's 3 songs that I really love. There's another track called Doctor Doctor that I think is solid. I don't think this is the best album in the world. I like those songs that I'm telling you about. But for sheer, Phil Collen, and now I got to get it. Phil Collen from Def Leppard played guitar in this band. The vocalist is Phil Lewis, who went on to fame with LA Guns. So talk about, not only an influential band, but later on going to be a part of 2 of the biggest bands in the hair metal scene. So they did put out one more album called Wasted Youth in 82. The band disappears, but when LA Guns was kind of struggling and look, like their vocalist, I think had some addiction issues, and somebody says, "Hey, there was this guy, Phil Lewis, in this band called Girl. Maybe you should check them out." And Phil Collen replaced who was it he replaced? In Def Leppard, the guitar player before Phil. Fuck, I know his name.
Yeah, I was too drunk for Def Leppard. Go figure.
So he ended up, he played on the High and Dry album, I think, the earlier guitar player. Then he gets fired, and they bring in Phil Collen, who is still with the band. So anyway, a lot of history with that band. That's why I put him in at number 10.
Nice, because you're right. That is a band. I think if it was more popular or sold more albums, they would be up there as one of the huge, influencer of hair metal. It would have been up there with Motley Crue and Hanoi Rocks, right there. Exactly. But yeah, the sales just weren't there, and only 2 albums, and they were done. But I gotta tip my hat to Phil Lewis's voice, regardless of what he's singing. Like you always say, he can sing the phone book, and I would love it. That raspy voice, it's a great voice. And I don't, because if you listen to Girl, it has that early 80s sound to it, because that's the product of the time.
Yep.
But yeah, for them to go on and these big, huge bands, it's just that luck, I guess.
Yeah. And it's kind of surprising that even with those 2 going on to those huge projects, like you would have thought Girl would have gotten a ton of attention then. Like when Romania blows up, and then Hysteria and Cocked and Loaded. But still, I feel like not a lot of people know about Girl, even though those guys went on to do such great things.
Yeah, and I also think part of it is it's not the same band. So like you said, when Hysteria blew up, people went out. Sorry, Romania blew up, people went out and started buying their Def Leppard's earlier albums. I think coming from a different band, especially one with a completely different sound,
right?
It just didn't work. It didn't happen. It is what it is.
So if you want to go revisit an important piece of the history of hair metal, go check out Sheer Greed by Girl.
I think they're both solid albums, but I like the second one a little.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to your number 9. What do you got?
All right, my number 9. I'll put it back up here. All right, this one I had to put on in the last minute because you're crying too much to get 10 fucking albums. But I didn't put it on because it definitely isn't considered glam metal, definitely not considered metal at all. But it's a phenomenal band. Rush's 7th album, Permanent Waves. I had no problem putting it on here. Spirit of Radio and Free Will were the more radio-friendly songs on this. Yep. But Jacob's Ladder and Natural Science, which are good tunes, they're more of the old school prog rock that Rush is kind of known for. But all 3 of these guys, incredibly talented, unbelievable what they've accomplished. And the fact that it's 1980 and they're putting out their 7th album, I think you forget they were around for a while by the time the 80s hit. But as a bassist, I mean, Geddy Lee is just a bass beast, and to be able to play those lines and sing at the same time and later play keyboards with his feet, it's an alien. There's no way a human being can do that. But yeah, I have no problems putting on a list.
Absolutely, and ordinarily, I'm not somebody who's like, you know, if Rush is considered kind of proggy in a way, but damn, the hits that they had, I love Tom Sawyer, Free Will, Spirit of Radio. Free Will has one of my favorite lyrics of all time. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a
choice. Yep.
Love that line. So, you know, I'm not the world's, you know, I don't go out and buy all the Rush albums, but I have a Rush best of, and there is so much shit that and damn, a three-piece, and each one of those guys would be considered like fucking monsters at everything that they did.
Exactly. But Rush is weird where you have your hardcore fans or people hate them. Yeah. And there's not many people in between. It's one of those bands. It's really odd. I remember went to a party I had at college, went to put one of the Rush tapes in. And one of my friends like, don't put that. If you put that in, I'm going to leave. And I want to say like maybe 5 years later, my girlfriend at the time, you know, getting a little frisky and put some songs. It's like, you put Rush on, I'm going to leave.
And then your girlfriend said, if you put that in, I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. So yeah.
Get it? If you put it in.
Let me just say, end of the night, rocking out to Rush. Let's just put it that way.
All right.
But yeah, it's one of those bands that the fans are really hardcore for them.
Yep.
But there's also, I want to see almost as many people just don't like Rush for whatever various reasons, which I don't get. I just don't get it.
And I think, fuck, what's their singer's name again?
Geddy Lee.
I think Geddy Lee's voice is an acquired taste.
Oh yeah,
I like it, but I could see people being like, you know. So, and you know, there's a lot of bands like, I don't like Tony Harnell for some reason. I think the vocals on TNT are like what turns me off. But other people are like, fuck, Tony Harnell's the greatest singer of all time, you know. So
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah. It shows what little you know. All right.
Okay. All right. Come up with your 10 struggle to come up now.
Hey, you fucking made all of your 10, and we didn't even like do any sort of like bartering. I just let you have everything. So
All right.
Okay.
Every time. Oh yeah, we got enough. 5 minutes before we go on. I only have 2.
Because I'm like, shit, I'll let him have I'll let him have all the 10 that he wants, and I'll make it work. And then at the end, I'm like, fuck, here I am picking like the shit of the litter, trying to get my 10 albums. So
give me some ideas. I called me the guru. I got a rep to uphold.
Shit, I am the fucking, they call me the guru because I got my shit down. All right, let's move on. Stop making fun of me, asshole. Number 9 is okay. So I mean, this is universally known as Ryan's band. You know, they should just start calling themselves that. But Krokus, and Krokus started early. I mean, shit, they were putting out albums in like 76. I think this is their 3rd or 4th album. It's called Metal Rendezvous, but it's their first album with the voice that would become known as the voice of Krokus, Mark Storace. And that was the kicker that they needed to finally get themselves on some charts, get some sales, because before that, they were just kind of an unknown entity in the music business. So this album, Metal Rendezvous, I don't think it did much in America. So they're a Swiss band. It actually went 4 times platinum in Switzerland, which is 200,000 copies. 50,000 copies is platinum. So for Switzerland, that's a lot of fucking albums. So revisited this today because I gave you all the good albums. So I'm like, I better go listen to fucking Krokus Metal Rendezvous. And Heat Strokes is great. Shy Kid, Lady Double Dealer, No Way, Backstreet Rock and Roll. You finally get the sense that they know the direction they're going. You know, before this, it was kind of a mishmash. Now they got the vocalist, and here's what's I think is most ironic is that Mark Storace was actually in the conversation to replace Bon Scott when AC was looking for a replacement. And he's like, he had just hooked up with Krokus. He said, I don't know if he was offered the job, but from what I hear is that he was like, even if he was going to be offered it, he was like, no, I got this band, Krokus. Talk about on backfires, Mark. But anyway, Krokus did have, a pretty solid career. I think they had a couple gold albums. I think they were great in the 80s. Ryan fucking loves them. And this is kind of where they started with the sound that they would become known for.
Yeah. But then again, the whole story about him replacing Bon Scott, it's like you sit there and hindsight's always 2020. You're like, well, that thing sold billions of albums. How can he not do that? But who's to say if he sang on it, it would have sold whatever was it 20 million, 30 million albums of that whole it sold, Yeah. And it's like, looking back, you're like, oh, what a stupid decision. Why would you go back with Krokus?
Yeah.
Who the hell no one knew back then, and who knows it was going to work out the same way.
And I mean, there were a lot of people who were thinking, is this the end of AC/DC?
Yeah.
Your vocalist is you've already been playing for 7 years, they kind of could be looked at as maybe a band on the downward slope. And here you got this new band, and you get to be part of, the beginning of it instead of coming in with a band that's already kind of established. So,
yeah, you probably also got more creative control of what goes on too.
Right. If you were going to join, if you were going to,
I'm not sure what kind of, yeah. Because I'm not sure. Okay, sorry, I keep talking over you. Keep fucking talking over you.
Your channel. So I was going to say that if you join AC/DC,
I was going to say that
there something. Does anything happen when I do this? I know something happens when I do this. Does anything happen when I do this?
Oh, good times.
Okay. Anyway.
Go ahead, sir.
You join AC/DC, you're just going to be, okay, here's what we want you to do. You probably have very little input. In Krokus, yes. So we were kind of getting
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That does my number 9. We are on to your number 8. What do you got?
All right, my number 8. You said you were going to put this on your list, but I was surprised. I thought that'd be one. This one would be one of contention. Def Leppard's debut, Onto the Night.
Well, I would have, but you took it, so I just decided to let you have it.
You want me to read this? We're going to play this fucking game? Okay.
Well,
all right. We're like an old married couple. What the shit? Just make dinner. But the hell was it? No, I hadn't.
I know. I said the only one I cared about was Scorpion.
I didn't even want Def Leppard
because I was trying to be nice to you.
No, you bullshit. When says the guy who just flipped me off fucking 2 minutes ago.
Shut up and talk about Def Leppard.
All right. So this is when Def Leppard was still a metal band. So you had one of my favorite tunes by them: "Wasted," "Rock Brigade," "Rocks Off." No comment. I'm surprised. "Satellite," "It Doesn't Matter." I mean, it's a great debut. I think this is probably my second favorite album after High and Dry by Def Leppard. This is just a killer album.
Yeah, and it's surprising that because when you experience Def Leppard later on, you don't consider them anything close to metal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go back to their beginnings and like, holy shit, like they were part of the new wave of British heavy metal, along with a lot of bands that would definitely be considered metal.
Yeah, you're right, and you're right. It's just odd that you wouldn't think of them like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, even High and Dry was definitely not necessarily metal. It started getting into the poppier side of metal. Then Pyromania was definitely poppier.
Yeah.
So and I'm not huge on the debut. I really like the debut. I kind of like that straight up poppier rock side of Pyromania, a little less of Hysteria. And I love High and Dry. But that first, I mean, just when you were reading off the songs, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's right. I forgot about Rock Brigade. Hello America's on.
Yeah.
There. Shit.
They got shit for Hello America.
Yeah.
Because people back at home in the UK were like, what about us? What the fuck? You know, we helped get to this point. Now you're just gonna slap us in the face with this?
Right.
But yeah, I still think High and Dry is Def Leppard's last real metal album. I still consider that a metal album. Totally. But then they went the pop way. But this has a raw sound to it as well. Because 1980, a fresh new band that they're hungry for it. I remember playing Wasted in a band that was in the late 90s. It's like the pseudo punk and grunge. It's post grunge at that point.
Yep.
Spin Doctors and shit like that were big, and we're going to clubs and bars playing old Def Leppard. I remember one guy going, "You guys should really play songs. You're good, but you should play songs like the Spin Doctors." The drummer like, "Fuck out of here! We're not playing that shit. I'm not doing that." Dude, what a smart commercial move for the band. Let's play songs nobody wants to hear.
Shit. Well, and okay, so they had that heavy metal sound, and you can never underestimate the impact of recording your second album with a guy named Mutt Lange.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you definitely were gonna get the poppier anthem, the anthem drums, the anthem like guitars, and obviously it worked, but this is kind of an unknown and underappreciated period of Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look who's here. It's Bryan. He's being mean to me. He's a big bitch.
Hell out of here. Yeah, the guy who said on X, "Oh, he's got problems with his brain," or what the fuck it was.
I thought I heard that. I don't know. Just kidding.
I'm on this show, so there's your proof right there.
Okay, we are on to my number 8, and Charlie says that her favorite band is Nazareth. I'm just kidding. My number 8 is Nazareth's Malice in Wonderland, and I talk about bands that I feel like is forgotten, unfairly so. Like, I'm kind of a passionate fucking Nazareth fan. Now, they put out a shit ton of albums in their history, and there is some like, I don't know, but most of their album, and Dan McCafferty's vocals, I'll just say, like, scream everything that I love about rock and roll. I mean, go back to Love Hurts and Hair of the Dog. I love that gritty fucking rasp. I mean, talk about somebody who sounds like they could have sang for AC/DC. But anyway, so they're a fairly big band in the 70s. Love Hurts and Hair of the Dog were massive hits. They had other songs that were kind of big. This Flight Tonight, and a bunch of others. But by the late 70s, they were kind of losing their popularity, which happened with most bands. Happened to Aerosmith, happened to Kiss. So on Malice in Wonderland, they did go a little bit poppier. So the first single was a song called Holiday. And here's where I sing, "Drinking my wine makes me feel fine." Everybody knows that song, I think, but if you just said Nazareth Holiday, most people would be like, what? That song, I think, was a fairly big hit. This album went to number 41 on Billboard. So with McCafferty's vocals, you knew they'd fucking have great ballads. Everyone knows I love ballads. Heart's Grown Cold. I shit you not. That is not your typical, it is a heartbreaking song. So I highly recommend. It's not your, "Oh babe, I love you." I mean, the lyrics are awesome. You'll get fucking, there'll be tears flowing down your eyes, kind of like when Bryan has to look at himself naked. No, I'm just kidding. And then I'll add this. So there's filler. There's in fact probably 5 songs that I was like, eh. But Fallen Angel is a solid mid-tempo track, and the 2 hits are so good. That's what propelled it onto the list. So I don't think it was certified, but like I said, went to number 41. I think it sold a couple 100,000 copies. And this is just another band that I wish got more credit in the grand scheme of rock and roll. I feel like they're up there, with Aerosmith, with Kiss at some points. But anyway, This album comes in at number 8.
You're right. It's another one of those bands like Thin Lizzy. Great, they put out great stuff, but I think most people know maybe a couple songs by them. Love Hurts and Hair of the Dog are their biggest ones. And if you turn on any classic rock station, that's all they're playing.
Yep.
It's just odd that some of these bands, like you said, they had other hits, but
yes,
I don't know, they're just pigeonholed into 2 songs now.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, shit. I mean, go on YouTube or whatever and check out a Nazareth's greatest hits. And I guarantee you'll be like, fuck, I forgot about that. Shit, forgot about that one. They always, like, most of their albums would have a minor hit or, or a couple minor hits. But yeah, their career got narrowed down to 2 songs because those 2 songs were so fucking good and influential. Yeah. I mean, Love Hurts, talk about a ballad that could get credit for what hair metal ballads later ended up becoming.
Yeah.
And is there any band that didn't cover Hair of the Dog? Shit,
I know. I know. Wasn't there like a commercial that had Love Hurts in it? I'm sure it was some kind of something about, I don't know, hurting your knee playing basketball, some shit.
I'm sure.
And Hair of the Dog is in everything. You want to have someone turn into a badass or, do something like that. And you're right. A lot of bands have covered that song.
Shit. Yeah. So yeah, go check this album out. At least check out those 3 songs. If you don't like those, you're not going to like anything else, but solid album, some filler, but good stuff.
Nice.
All right. Let's go on to your number 7.
All right, my number 7 in high school is one of my favorite bands, and I struggled to find this album anywhere, but it's Whitesnake's album, Ready and Willing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Whitesnake's blues rock beginnings. I love those first few albums before they, everything before the American version of Slide It In had a heavy blues influence. And this one, the original version of Fool for Your Loving's on it, Sweet Talker. The title track were the singles, but Black and Blue, Ain't Gonna Cry No More, She's a Woman. It's just great old school 70s blues influence rock. And I always liked these guys. When I was in high school, I saw the video for Still of the Night, got the 87 album because of that. And then I would always buy the back catalog, and I would been a fan of that earlier stuff since 87. This is just great stuff. I don't know why I couldn't find this one anywhere.
Yeah.
I eventually found it maybe about 20 years ago on Amazon. I was like, holy shit, I could finally get a copy of this album. Right. But back then I think I saw it once in like a local record store that's had a lot of imports and, bootlegs and stuff like that. And instead of buying that, because I didn't have enough money, I ended up buying it was a Queensryche live album before Empire. So this was 88, 89, and the sound quality sucked. And I bought a bootleg Guns N' Roses CD, which turned out to be the show from the Ritz that was on MTV. You can hear, right. It's not edits, but they lower the volume when they're cursing and the song. And I'm like, oh, wait. But I'm still happy I have it. It's pretty cool to listen to it in the car. But I didn't got this album until, maybe 20 years ago or so. It's just, I love this old school Whitesnake.
And most people could guess that's not my thing. It wasn't until the American version of Slide It In and that amped up, guitars a little bit higher in the mix, that simple, that 3-chord, Slide It In, and what was the other big rock song on that album?
Slow and Easy.
Slow and Easy. I mean, that's where I was like, holy shit. So when I go listen to the earlier blues stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, let's wait till 85 or whatever when I can start digging into it. But anyway, I mean, shit, Coverdale, I think a lot of people, maybe not, but a lot of people forget that he started in fucking Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Did a couple albums with Deep Purple. Deep Purple, talk about a band that was huge in the 70s. But then, goes on to start Whitesnake. They're kind of underground for a while.
We took a few guys with him.
Yeah. John Lord. Yeah. Until I think Deep Purple reformed in 84.
Yeah. Well, that's
so. But then once David decided to pretty himself up, and get with the hair metal times, all of a sudden it fucking blows up in 87. But yeah, so a lot of people don't know about, I think a lot of people don't know about this earlier. Well, I think a lot of people, Whitesnake starts in 85 or 87.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And it's around 84. It started becoming less of a band and more of the David Coverdale project.
yeah.
And it's just been revolving door musicians ever since.
Shit.
Yeah, there was an interview with the rest of the band saying, yeah, that's kind of like, we always wonder what the hell's going on with this. We used to have more input. I want to say up until maybe Slide It In, might have been up through Saints and Sinners. There was always one song the band wrote together.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, we're in this together. Let's do it together. Let's all come up with something. And then, by 84, by Slide It In, it was just like, yeah, we're not really the same level as David Coverdale anymore. And at one point, David Coverdale wanted to stop Whitesnake. I'm done. And Geffen convinced him to put out another album. That was the 87 album, which became their biggest album. Blew up.
Yep.
Whitesnake became a totally different thing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. All right. My number 7. And geez, I guess the theme of this episode is bands that we think just never got enough credit. But damn it, I think that applies to Cheap Trick. They came out, they blew up with the Live at Budokan. I Want You to Want Me became a huge hit, but they were always just a steady, not heavy metal, kind of pop rock, hard rock, and in a way power pop. But I love that shit. I've been and especially, in doing these videos, revisiting a lot of the 80s shit. And I'm like, geez, why did this stuff not get as much airplay as it did? So All Shook Up comes out in 1980. It goes gold. But there wasn't a really big hit on this thing. But I'm like, it went gold. So I listened to it, and it's what you expect. Power pop, pop rock. Stop This Game is great. I think a lot of people would know the song Baby Loves to Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I know Warrant covered it in some earlier concerts. Really up tempo, really cool. The World's Greatest Lover is completely, and Cheap Trick is notorious for being just huge fans of the Beatles, completely Beatles inspired. And then there's another great song called Love Comes a Tumbling Down. Cheap Trick kind of struggled when hair metal started until I think it was 88. Laugh of Luxury came out, and they had The Flame was about, went to number 1. There was a couple, Don't Be Cruel, a cover of the Elvis song. That album kind of got them back into the conversation with the bigger bands in rock. So, but I do think that Cheap Trick was definitely an influence on hair metal. All Shook Up comes in at number 7.
And you're right. It's amazing how they weren't bigger.
No,
like they had everything. They had the look. They had the hooky songs, and for some reason, it just never became big with people, which I don't get. It's just one of those odd bands that everyone knows about. Cheap Trick. If you're into rock, you know what Cheap Trick are.
Absolutely.
But yeah, they weren't selling millions upon millions.
Nope.
Like other bands.
That Live at Budokan sold a couple million.
Yeah.
I mean, Dream Police, that album, that title track probably went platinum.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, man. I mean, go look at a track listing of a Cheap Trick's greatest hits. Surrender, She's Tight.
She's
if you
Tight
want I mean, oh fuck. So they just have a million great songs, but not in the conversation of, oh shit, let's talk about hugely influential bands. I do think they finally made the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which that place
a couple of years ago, I think it was.
That place is a fucking joke anyway. But so anyway, yeah. But this is a there's a couple filler songs, but solid album, and was actually produced by George Martin, who produced the Beatles.
There you go.
So, all right,
what number album was that?
Number 4.
4, okay.
I think 4 or 5. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Point.
Move on to your number 6. What do you got?
All right, my next. I think the rest of my list is pretty much metal. That's pretty much just metal, but they're classics. Like they have to be on this list. My number 6 is Motorhead's Ace of Spades.
Yep.
And I don't know if we ever talk about Motorhead on this show, but I mean, I'll say it. Lemmy is God. Unbelievable. Just we were talking about this before. He never considered Motorhead a metal band. He always said it was just a rock band.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got this is the most commercially successful album they had, but Live to Win, Bite the Bullet, Love Me Like a Reptile, Fire, Fire, and of course the title track, Ace of Spades, easily their biggest song.
Yeah.
And this is one of those bands that everyone that's into metal knows about Motorhead, but they never really were a huge, publicly accepted band. And I think a lot of the on my list at this time, heavy metal was still looked at like, oh, it's kind of like, oh, they worship the devil and it's all fucked up and everyone's on drugs. But I mean, Ace of Spades is a classic metal album, hands down.
Yeah, and yeah, Ace or heavy metal was still kind of the bastard child of rock and roll at this time. So which is kind of what led to it becoming big. Parents were like, "Oh, don't listen to that devil worship," and kids had to start sneaking, Motörhead and AC/DC and Iron Maiden albums in the bedroom. Hopefully they're a cousin or an older brother was buying that shit because your parents didn't want you to listen to it. But damn it, and I talked about this on when I did that video with Trevor from the Crash Course Metal Show about heavy metal. Like a big allure of certain types of music is if your parents don't agree with it, then you want it. And rock and roll in the 80s and heavy metal, and especially fucking Motörhead. And I'm not the world's biggest Motörhead fan. I love gritty, rough vocals, but even Lemmy has a point where I'm like, I kind of struggle. But
Lemmy rules.
But agreed, Lemmy rules, and you can't think of heavy metal without thinking of Motörhead.
Exactly, and it's just it is like synonymous to heavy metal. Yeah. It's fucking Motörhead. I can't. What else can you say about it? It's just fucking Motörhead,
Yeah, I went to the Rainbow Bar and Grill not long after he died in Los Angeles, and there's that
statue.
Big statue, huge paint. There's a huge mural on or at least when I was there, on one of the buildings on the outside. So yeah,
because he was there all the time.
Oh yeah, he lived right down the street.
Yeah, he wanted to have a drink. You go to the fucking Rainbow.
Yeah,
because I just watched a video on YouTube. There was a documentary about the place.
Yep,
and they're like, he just sit there, drink beers quietly, and play the video poker machine all the time, doing his free time.
Yep. And I don't think he was there so much. Nobody bothered him.
Yeah.
You just
that's one of the reasons why I like going there. It's like no one bothers me. I don't give a shit. I got my beer, play my video poker, and no one comes up to me. I'm like, fuck it all.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Give it up for Lemmy. All right. On my number 6. I see, now this is one of the ones that I was conflicted about putting on. And one of the reasons that I was like, dude, I might need, because I was struggling because he took all the good ones. Anyway, okay, enough of that. But I don't think you can deny that Joan Jett started with the Runaways, but the Runaways and Joan Jett fucking rocked, and they were really influential. And Joan Jett, I don't think gets credit for being, one of the first, like, along with her previous band. I mean, there weren't a lot of girls doing heavy, punky, fast rock and roll. Mm-hmm. Most chick singers were all going to be, it was all going to be pop. It was all going to be country. And here comes along this, short little girl with black hair with her middle finger in the air going, fuck you. And, so most people know the follow-up album, I Love Rock and Roll. And I love that song. But this is actually the debut. It's called Bad Reputation. And the song Bad Reputation just screams punk rock. I don't give a damn about my bad reputation. Still gets played. And I've seen Joan Jett in concert so many times, and she's fucking great. And one of my favorite songs of shit, I still love this song, Do You Want to Touch Me? A Gary Glitter cover that is phenomenal and was a huge hit. So there's the other song that I really like is "You Don't Know What You've Got." Now, there's like 15 songs on this album and like 3 cover songs. Shouts is it? I think a shit cover. She covers "Wooly Bully." I think is kind of a shit cover. So there's too many tracks. They should have narrowed it down to 9. You know, back then it was acceptable to have 9 songs on an album. But the 3 songs that I talked about are great, and especially "Bad Reputation," "Do You Want to Touch Me." I can still listen to those today. They don't get old. So Joan Jett, I think, really influential, comes in at number 6.
Yeah, what an odd choice to have a 15-song debut album with 3 covers. Like, who thought of that stupid idea?
Yeah.
Didn't she also do Crimson and Clover? She did later
on
too.
the "I Love Rock and Roll."
Yeah, I didn't like that cover either. That one I was like,
was it a case of shit? We'll record a bunch of covers. We'll record, and because there's a lot of different styles of music on this album.
Yeah.
Later, she became more of just a straight ahead rocker. But I think after the Runaway, she's like, okay, let's do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We'll do a bunch of fucking covers and throw them all up against the wall and see if anything sticks.
Exactly.
And she got lucky that a couple of them did, but a lot of them, we were like, okay, Joan, let's tone that shit down and let's just rock a little bit.
Yeah, that's why a lot of bands will do covers or release covers as singles, because there's name recognition and song recognition. Just hopefully people will be like, hey, what's the rest of this album like?
Exactly. But, and one of the covers, "Do You Want to Touch Me," I mean, did become a massive hit. So,
it did.
But yeah, some of the other ones I was listening today, and I'm like, no, no.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to your number 5.
My number 5. This one, speaking of bands changing their vocalist, it is Black Sabbath with "Heaven and Hell." And I was just listening to this in the car today, and I go, fuck, this is such a good album. Where I kind of sometimes forget about the Dio albums. I know they're great and they kick ass, but then you put it in, you're like, oh my God, that's right. They were still doing it just as well, if not better, because they had a better vocalist with Dio than with Ozzy.
Yeah.
But I mean, you had Neon Nights open the album, which it's just a kick-ass album. Lady Evil is ballsy. Die Young were the singles, but then Children of the Sea is a great tune. Wishing Well, the title track is just fucking epic Black Sabbath. And it's such a good album that I think the Dio years deserve more credit than they really get, especially when compared with the Ozzy years of Black Sabbath. This is just a kick-ass album.
Completely agree. And I think, this was a pretty big album. Now, the follow-up, the Mob Rules, I don't know if it's loved. I think, and I'm not an expert on that album. I think people consider it kind of a disappointment. I think the band, they were kind of starting to realize, oh shit, maybe things aren't all hunky-dory.
Yeah.
They break up after that. But I think when this album came out, a lot of people were like, okay, Black Sabbath is set. They are going to, succeed well on into the 80s. And fucking Ozzy's probably going to be the oddball out, who doesn't do anything. Well, obviously Ozzy gets Randy Rhoads and goes on to become fucking maybe even bigger than Black Sabbath in the 70s. But for a period of this album, I mean, it was the fucking critics loved it. Fans were like, okay, hey, we got something good going on here. It just didn't last.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, the songs have the music has a Sabbath sound to it. I don't think Ozzy can pull off these songs like Dio. No one can sing like Dio.
No.
I mean, Dio, top metal vocalist ever. I mean, no one's doing what he can do. And I think that's a big reason why this album is so solid. I think that's a big part of it.
This is kind of off topic, not off topic, but did you ever listen when they reformed as Heaven and Hell? They put out an album.
Yes.
And I don't think I've listened to it. Like, was it good?
Pretty solid. Pretty fucking solid. Yeah. Listen to Eating the Cannibals. It's such a kick-ass power, just a great tune.
Yeah.
Great tunes. I would definitely suggest that one.
I know
that was a solid album.
I bought a CD compilation, the Dio Black Sabbath, the Dio years. So, but I never bought that Heaven and Hell album, and I'm kind of intrigued to listen to it to see
I
what
think it's pretty
later
solid.
on.
Isn't that the last recording Dio did before he died?
I think so.
I think that might be the
Pretty
last
sure.
one. Wow.
Yeah,
I
because I
still
think that there was talk of them try, maybe doing a tour, but then his health got bad, and then
yeah. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Sucks.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's move on to my number 5. Okay. Here's shit. I should have worn my Loverboy shirt because I do have one. But damn it. And I think it was with Ryan. I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna apologize for these bands that were a huge part of my youth and that were big fucking bands, even though they were on the poppier side of the rock gamut. Um, they were big on radio and they were definitely rock. This is Loverboy's self-titled album. It went to number 13 and went double platinum.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can tell they were kind of flirting with what their sound was going to be, because when I listened to this today, there was almost some shit that was kind of new wavy. But The Kid Is Hot Tonight, I fucking love that song. That was a big hit. Turn Me Loose, I love that song. That was a big hit. Now there was another single called Lady of the 80s. That one, I think that flirted with new wave. I think my third favorite song is called Little Girl. Geez, those guys in the 80s talking about young girls. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, after that, there was some filler. I like I said, it's their debut album. You're kind of going, okay, which direction are we gonna go? Once those two, The Kid Is Hot Tonight and Turn Me Loose became hits, they had a better idea because their next album went on to sell 4 million copies. But big band, another band that couldn't, when hair metal came out, they were like, okay, what do we do now? They tried to grow their hair a little bit longer, tried to fit in. It just never worked. But for a period, they were huge. Their self-titled album comes in at number 5.
Yeah, Loverboy is one of those bands. I also group with people might get mad at this, who were like a Night Ranger, Styx, maybe even REO Speedwagon, where they were almost like it was rock that your mom liked, kind of thing, and it was very popular on the radio.
Yep.
But they did have some, killer tunes, and they were very commercially successful.
Yeah. But yeah, you're not going to confuse them with heavy metal, but but some of their songs could, you hear some of their songs and you like that could fit into a hair metal band's set list later on and work just fine.
Or they can cover it. Or one of those bands
or cover it. So yeah, exactly. All right. That's my number 5. Let's move on to your number 4.
All right, my number 4, another metal classic. It's Judas Priest's British Steel. I almost fucked up the name. Just a heavy metal classic album. You got Living After Midnight, Breaking the Law, 2 of their biggest hits.
Yeah.
United was also a single. That one not as popular. But You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise, Steeler, Grinder, Metal Gods is a great song. I mean, it's a metal classic. It's right up there with, Motörhead, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, fucking these huge metal bands pumping out classic albums in 1980.
Yes. And I think this is the album that established them as, okay, we're going to be fine in the 80s. Because you started having that, it was still heavy metal, but it had the pop sensibilities like fucking Living After Midnight. That song is so catchy. United, you could tell they were kind of going for that that rock anthem. And it worked on this fucking album. And like this is the first album that I get into when I get into Judas Priest.
Yeah, it's a big album. It's huge.
Yeah. And then
who doesn't know Breaking the Law? I mean,
oh shit.
Come on. Like you said, Living After Midnight is catchy as all hell.
Yep.
Everyone knows that one too. But I mean, I'm sure hardcore Judas Priest fans are like, I'm sick of that tune or skip
totally.
kind of thing. But another great vocalist too.
I've always loved that the pop, maybe not poppy, but those catchier anthem like songs that Judas Priest did. That's the kind
Oh
of
yeah.
Got Another Thing Coming is one of my fucking favorite songs of the 80s. I never get sick of
Mhm.
that song. So that's where, I wasn't as big on like Painkiller. To me, that started to get a little bit heavier than
Oh
I was,
yeah.
Than I was into. I
Uh, the
ram it
title
down.
track, Painkiller. How do you not raise the volume on that? What a kick-ass tune. But you're right, they did seem to go heavier because it almost seemed like early 80s they were very successful. In the mid to late 80s, the albums didn't sell as much. But then in 90 they said, fuck it, we're gonna metal the shit out of our next
Exactly.
album. I love Painkiller. I think it's a
Yeah.
great album. I think it's a great album. But it's almost like the same with AC/DC when they put out Razor's Edge, like, holy shit, Priest is back.
Yes.
You know, it's just that's a great album. That's all I can say. I love Painkiller.
Yep. But I think they were hoping that was going to establish them for the 90s, but it didn't, because that's the last album with Halford before he left and went and did Fight.
Oh, was it? Was there another one?
No, I think
You might be right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I'm trying to think of it, but I can't. Yeah.
Yep.
But Fight was basically Judas Priest. I mean,
Sure.
it's just as heavy, just as ballsy,
Sure.
just as awesome.
Yeah. And then
Fun fact: what's his face? Satchel from Steel Panther played with the
yeah, that's right. That's right. And then he did that stupid. Do you remember he did that band 2 and put out an album called Voyeurs, and it was like fucking, I think it was like industrial. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys tried the industrial route in the late 90s. It's just like, nah.
Right.
But yeah, that's my number 4.
Great. And that's a great fucking Priest album. Okay.
Yeah.
My number 4, talk about, man, I mean, a band that I've swung from their nuts forever. And luckily, Gene hasn't charged me for the privilege. But Kiss put out the album Unmasked in 1980. And I've always been really upfront, man. Kiss has done some shit stuff. Like, there's been like fucking Music from the Elder was shit. And I'll be honest, there's some shit on this album. But there was enough solid rock songs to bring it at number 4. And Kiss did that a lot. Have 3, 4 really great songs that you knew they spent some time on, and then a bunch of filler. They've also had many great albums that I love the entire way through. Anyway, Unmasked. Why did they call the album Unmasked? Like, the Lick It Up album, where they took off the makeup, should have been called Unmasked.
Yeah.
Anyway, it went to number 35. It went gold. Now, I can't remember if this is the first single, but I think it was the first single, Shandy. That song sucks. To me, it's a disco-inspired piece of shit. It was a huge hit, especially in like Australia. It went to number 10. I think in Argentina, it went to number 1.
Southern Hemisphere shit.
Wait, what the fuck are you guys thinking? That's why nobody goes to your countries. Okay,
you upside down motherfuckers.
Yes. So, but this to me is the Ace album. This is the album where Ace fucking had his best. The first time he had like multiple songs and multiple great songs. He always would sing like one song on an album. He sang 3 songs on this album. So, Talk to Me was an Ace single. It's a great song.
Yeah.
2 Sides of the Coin wasn't a single. It should have been. It's a great Ace song. Paul had a single with Tomorrow, and that's, to me, the best Paul song. And Gene had one solid song called She's So European. Lots of filler. I think Shandy sucks, but it is a solid album. Comes in at number 4.
That's on the cover. They're taking a mask off of their makeup underneath the makeup. I think that was the gag they were going for. I don't think in 80 they were thinking, next album we're gonna take all this shit off our faces. Nah, it was they weren't thinking of that. But this is really the last. I would say the last 70s Kiss album, and then they started trying to catch up what was popular throughout the 80s. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And they're still around, so obviously something they did was right.
And this it only went gold. So then they're like, okay, fuck, we'll try to get critics to love us. We'll do music from The Elder, which was a shit show. And then finally they're like, okay, we got to go back to being fucking hard rock / close to heavy metal with Creatures of the Night. That's, to me, is their comeback album.
So I forgot about that one.
If I were to say my favorite Kiss albums, this would be near the bottom. But like I said, a lot of filler, 3 or 4 really solid songs that make it good enough to make the list.
Yeah, I can see why on the list. I agree with that.
Okay.
All right. Guru's not going to have Kiss on his list. Come on.
Kiss is going to be on there one way or another.
Exactly.
I think the only time I've ever not had a Kiss album, I don't think I had Hot in the Shade on 89 because there was too many fucking albums in 89.
Yeah, way better.
The only other album that didn't make it was fucking The Elder. The Elder.
What year did that come out? 80.
I think 81.
81.
Which I haven't. That's in the editing process, but I didn't put it on there because that's a shit show. So, all right, your number 3.
My number 3, another classic metal album. We mentioned it before. It's Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz. I don't know what it is. Black Sabbath and Ozzy did it. Van Halen and DLR did it. And just recently, Mick Mars and Motley Crue did it. A guy leaves the band, and they both put the band and the guy, solo guy, puts albums out the same year and go like, hey, fuck you, this is what I got. Yes. But I mean, a Blizzard of Oz, his debut as a solo artist with Randy Rhoads. Again, another metal classic. Yeah. Just an unbelievable album. Crazy Train, everybody knows. Yeah. Mr. Crowley, everybody knows. Those are the singles. I Don't Know starts off the album. Great tune. Steal Away, in parentheses, The Night. Suicide Solution. I mean, there's a lot of classic Ozzy songs on this fantastic metal album. I don't know what it was with the 80s, but metal bands are putting out some of their best shit in this year. And yeah, this really established that, hey, Ozzy is here as a solo artist and he's going to do it and do it well. And he hasn't looked back.
It was so shocking because, a bunch of bands broke up in the 70s, a ton of big bands. And the singer would always go off and do a solo album that would sell like shit. And then later go, I don't know about begging, but go back to the original band. I was just thinking like fucking Burton Cummings from the Guess Who, all these fucking bands, the singer would, everybody would say, oh, you are the talent, go off and do a solo album.
Yeah. Yep.
And how in the fuck Ozzy, being as fucked up on drugs and as drinking as he was, comes out of that unscathed and maybe bigger than his previous band is just unreal.
And then the whole 80s into the 90s, Ozzy putting out killer album after killer album. And by 88, when I forgot my first Ozzy Osbourne CD, No Rest for the Wicked, you didn't really think about him being the vocalist of Black Sabbath. No, this is just fucking Ozzy.
No. Because at that
point, last name you're talking about. That's how big he became.
He was so much bigger than Black Sabbath at that point. Black Sabbath was fucking dying in the late 80s. They were still putting out albums, but they're new singer after new singer. The albums, I don't know that they would go gold even. Here, Ozzy on double, triple platinum. Just unreal. Yeah,
he had a good 15 years of just killing it musically, commercially. And you're right. Yeah, I'm sure he got kicked out of Sabbath going, what am I going to do? Holy shit. Yeah. All up. And next thing you know, he has his biggest album by himself with a rotating, revolving door of guitarists every few albums. But it starts with this.
Was it a case of Sharon Osbourne putting quality? Because was Ozzy right? I mean, I know he got credit for a lot of the songwriting, but he wasn't writing lyrics. He wasn't writing the music. I think he was coming up with melodies.
Maybe.
For some reason, he just had hit after fucking hit.
I can't see Ozzy Osbourne coming up with the opening riff to Crazy Train.
No.
Or I Don't Know, or any of these fucking songs.
He obviously was known for always having uber talented guitarists.
Oh yeah,
but somebody had to write those songs, and I can't see it being Ozzy. But
It
damn it,
wasn't.
for some reason, even when he would get new musicians in the band, he would still fucking have hit albums.
Yeah.
So, like
Yeah.
I said, I think Sharon, and Sharon and her dad were so powerful. I think they found ways to surround him with talented people who could help him come up with shit that was going to be a hit. That's just my guess.
And especially to get someone like Randy Rhoads. Like what? Because I remember reading somewhere like Randy Rhoads didn't like Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm not a fan of the band and really got into the music.
Yeah.
And the legend goes that, Ozzy saw him play for a few seconds, like that's the guy. And I also heard towards the end before Randy Rhoads died, in the dumbest of ways. But so yeah, like I said, because you fucked up. But yeah, Randy Rhoads was thinking of leaving Ozzy towards the end before that stupid tragic accident.
Yeah.
But it always makes me wonder, like, what would he have done?
Sure.
What would a Randy Rhoads solo album sound like?
Right.
Who would he get to play on it with him? And goddamn, what kind of awesome guitar stuff did we miss out? With what happened.
I've always wondered, because he was good buddies. He had been in Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
Would he dare go back to Quiet Riot? I mean, Mental Health hadn't hit yet when he died. Anyway, I mean, yeah, it's a big case of what if. But
I also heard that Dana Strum had something to do with him getting involved with playing with Ozzy.
Yes. So Dana Strum was actually kind of like a talent scout. Like, he find musicians for bands. So Ozzy was looking for a guitar player. Dana Strum is like, okay, they contact him. Do you got anybody? Because he did that with many other people too, before he ended up joining Vinnie Vincent Invasion. And I think when Vinnie Vincent Invasion started, he was also like, okay, I'll find people for this project. And then that guy, he ended up producing Vinnie Vincent. He ended up producing Slaughter. I mean, that guy did a lot of fucking good shit.
But I also think Ozzy saw him, like he saw a bunch of guitarists before that and was like, I'm done. I'm going home. I can't do this anymore. And Dana Strum, we got one more guy, check him out. And supposedly Ozzy saw, wasn't official that, oh, here he is, watch it. He happened to see Randy just, playing before he was going to audition, quote unquote. Yeah. And Ozzy was like, yeah, that's the guy. Let's get him.
Yep. Yeah. I kind of heard that too. So yeah. Crazy story. Great album. Unreal that Ozzy went on to do what he went on to do and what Black Sabbath went on to do. I think that's one of the biggest, craziest things to happen in music history.
Yeah, supposedly it was Sharon that got him sober enough to get back into music.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it's going from being a complete fuck up drunken mess and getting kicked out of your band that was successful to all of a sudden becoming even more successful. Yeah, huge turnaround.
Yeah, unreal. All right, my number 3. Okay, here we go to the pop side. Okay. And just remember, I love fucking heavy metal, love hard rock. So don't forget that when I start talking about my number 3 album, which is High Infidelity by REO Speedwagon. I fucking love this album. I really do. And so did America, so did the world. It went to number 1. It went 10 times platinum. And I've said it before, you can't help but be influenced by what was on the radio. And REO Speedwagon, even though they were known as a pop album or as like kind of pop rock, Gary Richrath, their guitar player, fucking what could burn some shit up on the guitar. So there's definitely Keep On Loving You was a number 1 hit. But I think that is a phenomenon. I think that hair metal bands took inspiration from songs like that when it came time for them to write ballads. Take It On the Run was a massive hit. So fucking catchy. The song Don't Let 'Em Go is a fucking real rough rock song. Kevin Cronin's vocals were always going to be poppy, but that's a fucking great up-tempo song. And then there's a song called Tough Guys that I don't think is great on album, but I have seen REO Speedwagon live so many times. This is a song that when played live is so much harder and catchier than it is on the album. So I loved this when I was a younger kid. And you know, you can't only listen to metal because remember, every rocker has a soft side. And when my soft side comes out, sometimes I listen to REO Speedwagon, High Infidelity.
But also, what's the other big? So Riding the Storm Out is the same thing. You listen to the studio version, it's like, all right, it's all right. But you listen to the live version, it fucking rips.
Yep.
I don't. I had a chance to see them in. They played at my college in 91.
Yep.
That was my freshman year, and my girlfriend at the time was like, "I'm gonna go. I've never been to a concert before. I want to go see REO Speedwagon." I'm like, "I'm not seeing that sissy band. I'm not gonna go because that's not metal." And looking back now, like, you dummy, you could have gone seen the REO Speed, just put another thing on the your live show resume to put on there. But now I sat in the dorm listening, I don't know, Salty Dog or the albums I had at the time. So yeah, I never got to see them live. But you're right, it is another one of those bands that we were saying before, that massive. It's also looked at the same, your mom, the rock that your mom kind of liked, one of those kind of bands. I understand why it's on the list. I can see that. I'm not going to sit there and knock it. My list is more kick-ass and metal, but that's a different story altogether.
But let me say this, if you were hoping for a little action from that night with your girlfriend, you should have gone, because REO Speedwagon is the king of makeout music, all right?
I am never going to say I was a ladies' man. in my history.
All right. Okay. Yep. I really do fucking love that. All right. We're down to the top two. That should be the end of my pop rock days. Let's move on to your number two. What do you got?
My number two, another classic metal band. It's the self-titled debut by Iron Maiden. And this is with Paul Di'Anno singing, sorry. And the first two albums by Maiden had a more punk sound to it. But I still love the first two albums. I mean, you have Running Free and Sanctuary, which are killer songs, the singles. Phantom of the Opera, Iron Maiden by Iron Maiden off this album, Iron Maiden, great tune. I mean, again, it's a different sound than what Maiden would later be on these first two albums. I still think it's a killer classic metal debut right here. Great album.
I don't know if I've ever learned, and you probably know, like, what happened with Paul Di'Anno. I know Bruce Dickinson is fucking awesome. Was it just like, hey, he's a better singer, or what happened that he?
Yeah, they want to go in a kind of I don't want to say different direction, but yeah, he's better vocal. Yeah. There's one story where Bruce saw them playing live. I think it was a club or something, and he said, "I'm going to sing for this band."
Right.
And it was a few years later he did. Paul Di'Anno died a few years ago, actually.
No, I don't think he did, because
he's not dead. Why do I think? I thought he died.
He had a bunch of health problems. Like, I think he's in a wheelchair, but I just saw a story online that, like, Paul Di'Anno and Bruce Dickinson just met for the first time. And there's a picture, and Bruce is all grayed up with the hair. There's Paul Di'Anno sitting in his wheelchair. So wow. That's the only reason I know that, is because I
thought he died. I could have sworn. Because I know a few years back, he's like, I'm retiring from music. And you're still in music? Like, no, I had any idea. Because, he's known as a guy that sang the first vocals for Iron Maiden now. I thought he did put an album out or two, but
I think he started the band, and I could be way off, but Di'Anno, and I think after Iron Maiden, he had some name recognition. Iron Maiden was fucking huge, so I'm sure he got a record deal. I think he put out some shit. I have no clue if it was like the Maiden stuff. I have no clue how well it did. I'm sure it must not have done that well. So
yeah, but that's one of those bands that they changed the vocalist, and then they had a explosion of success afterwards. I mean,
yep.
For me personally, the first album I bought from Maiden was Seventh Son. Seeing Can I Play with Madness on Headbangers Ball, and I'm like, I gotta get this album. And my teenage brain would go out and buy the back catalog of these bands. And yeah, them, Whitesnake, and a few in Van Halen, like, I was obsessed with those bands in high school. And yeah, I still think those first 6 or 7 Maiden albums are just fucking killer. Classic metal. Great stuff.
It's amazing that you had enough money to buy albums after you were buying Playboys and Jergens hand lotion.
All right, here we go with this again. All right. So you didn't have the money for that? Just, raw starting fires in your pants all the time? I remember my mom even says, but I remember my mom, especially later on, had a driver's license. She even said to me, if you stop spending all this money on albums, you'd have enough to buy a car. I mean, this is 1989, so I mean, it's not as much as it was then. And I was still like, nah, fuck it, I'm buying albums.
Yeah.
No way I'm not buying music. Yeah.
Music is more important than whatever you could be like.
Getting places.
Yeah. My friends got and living your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck that. I can just sit here on my couch and listen to music and I'll be just fine. All right. Okay. My number 2, which just shut up about me pulling this album from you. You had a lot of albums that I would have taken. But I love, man, the Scorpions. And to me, it maybe started with Love Drive, but with Animal Magnetism from 1980, that's where I remember. I mean, because shit, the Zoo was on it. And who fucking doesn't love the Zoo? I still worship that song. The album went platinum. It only went to number 52 on Billboard. I think this got helped out because when Blackout came out 2 years later and got massive, I think people started buying, Animal Magnetism, probably Up Drive as well, puts it up to platinum. But fuck, Make It Real, Falling in Love. I love that part. Falling in love. Good one. Excuse me. My vocal cords aren't equipped for that at this age. Anyway, great song. And the Zoo, one of the most catchy, epic guitar riffs of that decade, I think. One of the most easily recognizable riffs. And so, man, I just love the Scorpions. And I've said it before, wasn't huge on them in the 80s, knew the hit, and finally revisited them, when I stopped being too cool, for a 70s band. And damn it, now I've just been on a huge Scorpions kick. So great album, comes in at number 2.
Yeah, I had this on my list, and then I had to help you out in your tear-fueled panic to get 10 albums. But I had my notes here. Don't Make Promises Your Body Can't Keep. Falling in Love is a great tune. You said that. 20th Century Man. I think The Zoo is probably my favorite Scorpion song. Yeah. And it's just a kick-ass tune.
Yes.
The album cover, I don't know what the hell's going on. It's weird.
Yeah, who was weird? They had some weird covers.
Who was remember that show, that metal show with Eddie Trunk, and I forget the comedian.
Don Jameson.
Not him, the other one. Jim Florentine. Oh my God. They were talking about the album cover on that metal show, and they're like, it stinks, blah, blah, it's stupid. And Jim Florentine was like, what's the problem? It's just it's a woman, a dog next to a woman about to blow a guy. Who cares? But yeah, it is a killer album. That's such a good goddamn album. Yeah. I was the same way. I didn't get into the Scorpions until later, but I was more like, I'm not going to buy the whole thing with money and buying albums. Yeah. I couldn't afford to buy a bunch of Scorpion albums. Yeah. And there's no way I was going to buy one album and be done with it. I really didn't do that. But
legitimately, I haven't ever really gone back to their early 70s shit.
Yeah.
Because I think it was a much different sound. I probably should just go check it out. But I think on 79, I think it was 79, Love Drive, they started getting into the sound that they would be known for in the 80s.
Yeah, I want to say their first album or so. When did that come out? It almost had like a 60s vibe to it.
Oh yeah, they had albums out in 72, shit, maybe even earlier. Fuck.
Yeah, and it wasn't rock. It was more like almost like a folk kind of thing. Like they should have been playing it with that kind of sound.
Yeah, like so fucking odd. Jethro Tull or some shit.
Yeah, kind of like that. It's better. Yeah, it's better.
All right. Great album. What's your number? Shit, your number 1.
My number 1. I got this shirt and all. My favorite band, my favorite album by them. I mentioned it before when we talked about closing songs, and my favorite song is on this album by them. Nice. Women and Children First by Van Halen. I love this album, love this band, especially their early stuff. I mean, you have And the Cradle Rock, Romeo Delight, Fools, Everybody Wants Some, and my personal favorite song by Van Halen in a simple rhyme. It's just the perfect Van Halen song. Everything you want from Van Halen, it's demonstrated perfectly in that tune. I mean, it's such a killer album. I don't know what else to say about it. It's fantastic.
Right. Yeah, all those tracks that you listed are great. I honestly think, Motley Crue gets all the credit, but isn't Van Halen where hair metal started? I mean, maybe not the sound, but everything else. I don't know.
I think a lot of it.
I'm sorry. I said it on the last episode. I think every hair metal singer, every hair metal frontman was doing whatever they could to become somewhat like David Lee Roth. So yeah, and guitar players were trying to be fucking Eddie Van Halen. Not that they're succeeding, but that's what they wanted. So I know Motley Crue, because Motley Crue started playing with the look. They were doing outlandish things with their looks, where Van Halen, they were just kind of wearing, I mean, Dave was wearing leather pants and shit, but they weren't doing all the makeup and stuff. So maybe that's a reason. But I just think that Van Halen, they do kind of get credit, but damn it, they are maybe the number one influence of hair metal bands.
Yeah, and I think because I was saying this before, how I think Van Halen and earlier Led Zeppelin, it was that you have the good-looking vocalist. Yeah. I mean, David Lee Roth's an unbelievable frontman. I mean, he's just the perfect picture of what a frontman does.
Yes,
his voice, not the greatest, you'll get that, but he made up for it and then some with his onstage antics and how to get a crowd involved and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And like you said, Eddie Van Halen influenced so many guitarists. Yeah. And this the third album, and they're still just putting out killer stuff. Yeah. Where, everyone talks about how Eruption was. They put that on, they were blown away. I want to be a guitarist. I want to play like Eddie Van Halen. I want to learn to do that. All that kind of stuff. And I get why you would say it does influence that, because you do see a lot of, especially the late 80s hair metal, hard rock, whatever you want to label it. I'm not getting into that shit again. But they tried to model themselves off what Van Halen at that point were doing for 10 plus years. Totally. And it's a huge influence over the the glam hair metal scene. Yep. Where it's the party attitude of those David Lee Roth albums was also a big thing that carried over to influence the later 80s rock bands as well. Yep. And when people say, are you a David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar fan? I'm more of a David Lee Roth era fan. I like both. I'm not saying the stuff with Sammy was bad or it sucks, but I think it's also the attitude of the music of those early 5 albums or so, 5, whatever, the DLR albums. That's what I like more. I think with Sammy, they became more of a mature band. Yep. And the music kind of showed that, which I still think it's still Eddie Van fucking Halen. Yeah. And he's playing great stuff. It's still Michael Anthony thumping on the bass and providing that Van Halen sound with his background vocals. So it's still there. And again, another band that started with one vocalist, had success, but I think their success really exploded with Sammy. But as I said, I like both, but I think the attitude of the music from DLR's era, I like way more.
Yeah, Sammy's was more mature. David Lee Roth, the David Lee Roth era was never going to be known for maturity. Even now, David Lee Roth is not known for being grown up and sensible. So
no.
But man,
sing a ballad?
Yeah,
sing a ballad.
Yeah, he can't sing a ballad. No,
that's true too.
Yeah. All right, great. On to my number one, and okay, it's almost difficult for me to talk about this album. I have said many times that this may be my favorite album of all time. One of the most successful, not just rock, metal, one of the most successful albums of all time. It is fucking AC/DC's Back in Black. I just cannot ever get enough of this thing. Um, it didn't go to number one. It went to number 6, but it's 26 fucking times platinum. 26.
That's
I mean,
great.
what Thriller's probably at like 40. But after Thriller, what else has sold more than this? I mean, maybe the Eagles' greatest hits, 71 to 75.
I got the
It's
big one.
probably in the top 5 best-selling albums of all time. Mutt Lange produced it. If you're gonna, I was like, what song do I leave off? The title track, one of the most epic guitar riffs of all time. I think my favorite song on the album is Shoot to Thrill.
Mm-hmm.
You Shook Me All Night Long. I remember in the 80s, that seemed to be like the song all my friends loved the most off this album. Hell's Bells with that fucking, and we've talked about bands that went from one singer to another. Well, shit, this is the first album after Bon Scott dies.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it, I'd love to talk about Highway to Hell at some point. But Hell's Bells, the album opens with that. You got that fucking dinging of that huge fucking bell and that death-like sound. And all of a sudden, here comes that guitar for Hell's Bells. I'm like getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Have a Drink on Me, Shake a Leg, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. The whole fucking album. I still like, I love finding shit about this album. If I could, I'd have a Back in Black room. I just, again, the whole time of this series, I've been going, okay, at some point I get to talk about Back in Black and I can't fucking wait. So there's a reason it went 26 times platinum. A lot of people think like I do that it's one of the greatest albums of all time. So it's my number one.
Just saying it went 26 times platinum, just let that sink in. Yeah. That alone on itself. But you're right. The track listing on this thing, it's just an amazing album. A lot of AC/DC's classic songs are on this. I mean, to come back from losing your vocalist to putting out something of this caliber is just, it's unfucking real. Yep. And it's just the quintessential AC/DC album. Right. I mean, after this album, what's his face? Johnson, he is the voice of AC/DC. Right. I mean, right. And like you said, you had your Bon Scott era, and then you have your Brian Johnson era, and I like both. But I mean, when you think of AC/DC, most people are thinking of Johnson on vocals singing these damn songs.
Yeah, and I think in late, for most of my life, I was a Brian Johnson guy. But, I loved the band so much that it wasn't till years later that I really, because I knew Highway to Hell, but it was years later that I started going back to the earlier albums, and I discovered that they're fucking phenomenal. High Voltage, shit. So all those earlier albums are great. I've come to maybe think that I'm more of a Bon Scott guy, because AC/DC later on, they're AC/DC. You're always gonna like it, but they did put out albums where you're like, okay, this isn't grabbing me as much as other stuff has.
Yeah.
So, but to list my favorite AC/DC album, it is the Brian Johnson album, Back in Black, and it's a force of nature. I always say this, it's probably sold 1 million copies since we started talking about this, talking on this video. So and I think if I were to have to give somebody to describe a hair metal band, I'd probably show them Poison. But if you were to say, hey, describe to me what rock and metal sounds like, I have no clue. I'd probably say, here, take a copy of Back in Black.
Yeah, it's a quintessential rock album. It's just it basically, I mean, you can play songs like Back in Black and She Shook Me All Night Long, and people know those songs. They know that song, regardless of age. And it's been 44 years.
Yeah.
Just those two songs alone that people recognize as soon as you hear the first, guitar tone notes of it. That's just amazing in itself. But then to have a whole album just as good around those two songs, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that definitely, if you were going to be a pissy-eyed crybaby about it. No, actually, I wasn't going to touch it. I knew you were going to have ACDC. Right. No, I was going to touch that one. I was like, nah, I'm not. I almost put it on the list as just to be sarcastic to see what you would say. And I was like, nah, I don't want him busting a brain, busting a vein in his brain, having a stroke or something.
When I got your list, I wasn't all pissy, even though you took a bunch of albums that I liked, because I'm like, I don't care. AC/DC Back in Black is on this thing. I'll just talk about that.
Yeah, I gave it to you. I'd let you have it.
Okay. All right. Hey,
let me say this about this year, and I think why, because it hit me before, why we struggled so much with these earlier years is because we were really not at an age where we were buying albums.
Sure.
In 1980, I was psyched because, Empire Strikes Back was coming out, and I was buying the figures for that. I wasn't buying these albums. It was later in life. If I was 17 in 1980, I probably would have a list, no problem, write it up, no issue. But then again, it wouldn't be the hair metal guru show. It would be the classic rock guru show. Right. But I think that's a big part when, like, from 86 till about 92, we can spit out albums left and right because A, there was a lot, but B, we were in the thick of things buying this stuff back then. Like I said, 1980, I was not waiting online for women and children first to come out.
Yes, you're exactly right. Like when you start like in North Dakota, you can get driver's license when you're 14. So and when I was 14 is 1986.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, Cinderella, Poison, that is the music that I was getting into as I was coming of age. You have your license, you're starting to, you maybe have a part-time job where you can maybe buy some of your own music.
Yep.
And you're starting to spread your wings. Okay, I don't want to listen to what my older brother listened to or what my parents listened to. I want my thing. So that's a great point. 1980, I love a lot of that music, but it wasn't until years later that I was understanding it and going, okay, hey, I'm going to go back to some of this earlier shit that was around when I was a kid.
Yeah. And if it was me, am I going to get Snow Trooper Star Wars figure or Iron Maiden's debut as a 9-year-old? I was going for the action figure. I wasn't going to buy albums. But
And what I was listening to in 1980 was probably what my older brother was listening to. So I remember listening to a shit ton of Bob Seger, Against the Wind.
Okay, yeah.
And I love that. Whatever my brother liked, I liked. But when I started getting into my own music, I mean, he was like never into like Poison. He's like, okay, that's your shit. His shit was REO Speedwagon.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking, he probably liked AC/DC because who didn't? But, Bob Seger, all that stuff. So, so I think that's a great point. But, real music fans, you go back and you explore those earlier years. I've never been one to just stick, I was always looking for new bands when I got older. I loved finding new, older bands that I haven't heard about yet. We just talked about that Bullet, that band from Germany. I mean, I love finding, I've never heard of this band from 1982, so that's one of the cool parts about being a big music fan is there's practically an unlimited supply. You can still find 80s hair metal bands that I've never heard of. And, so that's cool shit.
Well, let's see, when I was growing up, it was my mom would either have in the car, whatever top, 40 station playing the hits, or Motown. Motown was the music she was into when she was a teenager, and of course her parents hated all that shit. And I remember as a kid, she'd put it on. You're like, oh, this is old people music. What the fuck? But then when I got older, you're just like, this is some good stuff.
Right.
James Jameson's a great bassist, and especially when I started playing, you start listening to stuff with a different ear. Than, oh, this is too old. You're like, no, this is pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Maybe I should pick this up. But yeah, again, being a kid, you're not going out and buying albums with this stuff. It's like you said, someone older in the family was playing music. That's what you heard in the background. Pretty much what it was.
Yep. And it influenced you somehow. You know, it influenced your taste. You know, like shit. That's why I got fucking High Infidelity on my list, because I have a sister who's 6 years older, a brother who's 4 years older, and they played the shit out of Foreigner, REO Speedwagon, probably Billy Squire. All that was huge in the early 80s. So I just grew up thinking this is what I like. And then suddenly you start leaving their music behind and start getting your own music, you know?
Yeah.
And so, all right. Hey, that was a great conversation and a great way, I think, to end this series. I'm sure we will delve into 70s metal or rock at some point. But Bryan,
there are a few years we're going to revisit too, because we had so many goddamn albums.
Oh yeah, shit. That's probably what we should do first, is start going back and going, okay, 1989 part 2.
The honorable mentions.
Man, some of those years were fucking huge. So, hey, before we wrap it up, would love it. Hey, tell us, there's got to be some albums out there that we missed out on. Tell us what we missed. Tell us where we fucked up. Tell me how Bryan took all the fucking albums that I should have had, because it's my fucking channel.
How much more of a guru I am than this guy.
Douchebag. No, I'm just kidding. So,
I've been called worse things by better people.
Yeah. Would love it if you like, subscribe, comment. You have the opportunity to be a member. I'll try to put in my members. I think I have about 6 people that are subscribing, so which is awesome. Really appreciate all the support for the channel. Just went over 2,500 subscribers just a few days ago, which was great to see. So, Bryan, thank you for being back and talking about 80.
Let me talk my shit. I got my show on Stationhead Friday nights, playing rare tracks, deep tunes from all these bands. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, find me at HB Basement. Always talking music there. Thanks again for having me on. It's been a fun ride for the past 20 years. Just felt like 20 years.
Right, exactly. Hey, yep, and you've been doing a great job. I really love talking, and I think people, you know, we give each other a lot of shit, but I think it reminds people of, you know, when you're younger and you're talking shit with your buddies. So, you know, that's what I feel like is a big draw to the channel. So thank you. Hey, again, do all that shit. Follow us on X at HB Basement. I don't know where I'm pointing. At Hair Metal Guru. And hey, until the next video comes out, my name's Anthony. They call me the Guru. Take care.